You already know what it is. Isa Goat, Yoichi him, you know. I watched the first season of Blue Lock and now I know. I am a striker.
Isn't that a volleyball?
It's called being a cross-dimensional athlete. I watched his goal.
Anytime I want to motivate myself to do something, I always end up going back to sports anime, whether it be going to nationals, running the Hakone Ekiden, or trying to become the best striker in the world. These shows know how to inspire people to chase their goals. Question is, how do they do it? In this video, we're going to break down a basic story structure of how to write a sports story, whether it be for your own sports story or whether or not you're writing the script for the NBA or the NFL. Every story needs its themes. And so you need to decide what your story is going to be about. Do you want your story to highlight the importance of teamwork or the rigorous and treacherous path of pursuing one's dreams relentlessly, or maybe just showing how a simple sport can change somebody's life for the better? After you have those things decided, you're going to want to manifest that into a tangible goal, whether that be going to nationals, running the Hakone Ekiden, etc., etc. Something to note, sports dramas in and of themselves actually isn't very much about the sport it's telling. The sport is the channel of which we're able to see, or the telescope for which we're able to see into the characters. And the story is, of course, really about the characters and what the sport means to them and showing their strife and struggles through the sport instead of like usual story like shonen where it's like combat. Run with the Wind is a good example of this because it's a story about the characters in college rather than actual sport of running itself. Assuming this is a team-oriented sport you're writing about, this is where you throw up the bat signal.
There's only one spot open right now, so we're gonna have tryouts.
Can't have a story and a sports team without a team. And this is a great time to get your misfit band ensemble characters together and get to show and highlight some of their dynamics as well as some of their baggage. Sometimes the characters will love each other. Sometimes they'll hate each other. Sometimes they'll want to devour each other. Oftentimes there will usually be a bonding moment whether or not they love or hate each other. There will usually be a bonding moment between these characters at this stage because that's how you build team like you need team chemistry in order for your team to succeed. So if they even want a chance and succeed, they need to, yeah. Examples of this would be Kageyama and Hinata during the first couple episodes, and then also Chigiri and Isagi in Blue Lock also during those first couple episodes. When you're creating other teams, you don't need, apart from like one or two very important characters, you don't need every single character to be fleshed out. I mean, imagine if haikyuu had every single character on every single team fleshed out. Granted, they do a good job of a lot of characters. It's impressive, really. MHA could take notes, but you don't need to do that. Instead, focus more on picking one or two important characters per team. That's not your main team. Your main team's a little different. You want to treat that with more care and more detail, more intention. But with your rival teams and your antagonistic teams, pick one or two important characters and then build around them to highlight that dynamic. So instead, you're focusing more on team dynamic and team culture and how that's different from your main team. Also, these cultures should, of course, build on your story's themes. Your main team has a way of doing things that speaks to the overarching themes and messages of your story. How do these other cultures differ and what do they say about the themes of your story? Now that you got your team, it's good to build up hype around them as well as the other teams they'll be facing in the regular season. This is also a good time to start introducing kinks in the team. If teammates can't get along in real life, in fiction, we should up that to the nth degree and squeeze out the content of that drama. This is also probably the time that you introduce the superpowers. If you're new to sports anime, you'll probably be weirded out to find out that a lot of these high school athletes have superpowers, because when you're dealing with either a visual storytelling medium or a novel, you're gonna want to use metaphor. Metaphors are great to portray in the written word just how the characters are feeling, and they're visually storytelling as well. Metaphors are just great in general. You can go ahead and make the superpowers actually a metaphor for what the characters are feeling, or you can actually be cool and just make them real superpowers. Anime does that. This is anime. It's a fictional story. go ahead and put superpowers in there. I don't care. People get used to it. I thought it was weird at first. Now I kind of like it. Haikyuu is more based in realism, while Kuroko is more based in not realism. It's just whatever fits your fancy. It's whatever how you want to go. Just do your own thing with it. You don't want superpowers, don't put superpowers. But you gotta have like a little bit of pizzazz in there. Even Haikyuu had some suspension of disbelief factor in there, the cool factor. The regular season is going to vary depending on what sport your characters are playing, whether or not it's just an actual regular season like a usual like basketball or baseball, or if it's smaller tournaments that lead to qualifications to bigger tournaments. Regular seasons always have their ups and downs. I mean, you can even spice it up and have your team go on a losing streak. Warriors still have a shot, man. I swear, the dynasty isn't dead. In most situations, the team that you're following will lose. Hell, Isagi loses like a gazillion times in like the first several episodes, whether or not that be an actual physical loss, which it is, or a more like idealistic, like he lost in the battle marketplace of free ideas, which he also loses in quite frequently. In Haikyuu, in the first go around, Kurosano lost to Abajosai, which to me, watching this is like the second sports anime I watched. I was actually not expecting that at all, which was cool. And it really like can just add extra flavor to your story, because sports is about losing. Even like Michael Jordan didn't win every single game. Your team's gonna lose. You can even chuck in some crying senpais for good measure. This is usually the time where drama will start. You got crying people, there's tension there, you just lost a hard fought game. And there might be schisms in your team now going farther into the regular season. Sports stories, even more so than regular stories, are about overcoming obstacles and learning how to get up when you're down. And so there is nothing better, and feel free to just take your disheartened team of ball players and huck them into a remote location where they can experience Spartan-like training at a training camp. Haikyuu did this really well because not only did they have the schism between Kageyama and Hinata, they also got to highlight several of the teams that would be playing in the future, so they got the added benefit of hyping them up. And your characters, while the process will be rough, and it should be rough, they should be crying, maybe not crying, but there should definitely be some moaning and groaning in there. They will come out stronger than they came in. This part of the story may not technically be called the playoffs, but necessarily after the training camp, your stakes should be higher. Your team already lost once, and they most certainly do not want to do it again. And now, especially it's later in the season, there's definitely no more room for error. You can't be choking games anymore. The dynasty isn't dead. Remember though, it's not just your protagonist team that got stronger. Every other team had an off season. All the other teams should also be coming back with a vengeance, and which is way stronger than they used to be before, and maybe they even scooped up some new teammates. If your team lost during the regular season, which they most certainly should have, chuck the revenge match in there. You've been hyping up a rival for the past couple of seasons, this is the place to put it. Your character's growth shouldn't cease here though. This is the playoffs. There's no more training camp and there's no more room for defeat. So your characters are gonna have to be forced to evolve and grow within the matches themselves, which leads to a lot of great moments. Defeat is probably the most important thing when it comes to sports stories. Sports stories are at their best when you show a character triumphing over the obstacles that they had to get to win the competition. It's about how we bounce back from losses and how we improve and grow. In the sport, that's the most important. Our whole world is actually just very invested in very simple games. And I think the sports stories are really refreshing because the world isn't under attack. Nobody's loved ones are gonna die in combat. It's just, at the end of the day, it's a game, but the emotional stakes are still there because we care about the characters, we care about their growth and development. We've seen how hard they've worked, and that's the important part. It is just inspiring to see people overcome difficult odds and triumph over them. Because once again, your sports story should not be about the sport. It should be about the players and their hard work and their passion and seeing them put in that work and see the fruits of their labor and overcome. That's the inspiring part. The sport is just the medium for that passion and hard work to be channeled into a spectacle for us outsiders to enjoy. That's basic. That's all I got.